The past often comes to us not as grand monuments or heroic tales, but as small fragments, silent stories preserved in folds of parchment, the scribbles of court clerks, or the occasional notes in forgotten chronicles. Greetings, friends. Tonight we cautiously cross the threshold of one such fragment, a moment from 1387, in a small French town where something strange, perhaps even disturbing, happened. A pig, an ordinary street creature, bit a child. And from that single act, a trail of memory stretches across the centuries. Pigs were no strangers to 14th century cities. They were not confined to barns or sheds. They roamed freely, foraging in gutters, sniffing garbage, living side by side with humans. To the modern ear, it may seem strange. A pig wandering the marketplace, touching women with baskets, or poking around the door of a tavern. But to those who lived then, it was a common occurrence, a part of life. The bite itself is only the surface. Beneath this lie questions about how people lived, how they shared their space with animals, how they understood responsibility, contingency, and punishment. In those years, animals were not always seen as passive beings. They could be judged, condemned, and punished in ways that now seem strange, even disturbing to us. But to them, community was a web where human and animal life intertwined, and both could be held accountable. The silence of a world long gone, but attainable when we close our eyes and listen carefully. Calm down now. Breathe quietly, and let the silence of the past envelop you. And before we wander any further down this forgotten street, a gentle reminder. If you find solace in these slow stories, if they bring you rest or solace at the edge of the night, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. It helps the story continue, to carry over into new nights for others to find. The bell from the church tower tolled gently over the rooftops of the town of Saint-Michel-sur-Orge, a sleepy place just south of Paris. It was the spring of the year, 1387. The sky was a pale wash of linen gray, the kind that promised a steady, uneventful day. In the market square, the cobblestones were still wet from the early dew, their uneven surfaces darkened by the morning mist. A cat padded slowly past a stack of firewood. Somewhere nearby, a low cart creaked. The butcher, old Guillaume, opened the shutters of his stall, the hinges groaning with complaint. Inside, rows of iron hooks hung from wooden beams, empty for now but waiting. He moved slowly, as one does when the joints no longer surprise. His breath was visible as small puffs of fog. He said nothing. There was no one to speak to at this hour. A pig squealed softly in a pen beside the stable, shifting its weight with the dull rhythm of animals with nowhere to be. The pig's eyes were dark, sleepy, almost thoughtful. It snorted once, then fell silent again. A small girl, Madeleine, no more than 7, walked across the far side of the square with a basket tucked beneath her arm. Her hair was the color of dry straw, and her wool cloak hung unevenly from her shoulders. She paused by the well, dipped a tin cup, drank, and stood there a while, listening to the muffled sounds of distant voices behind shuttered doors. The town's life stirred slowly. Window panes reflected the soft light of the waking day. Carts were pulled out from sheds. Doors creaked open. The baker's oven exhaled its first breath of warm, yeasty air. No one hurried. It was not a town for haste. It was not a... By the second hour after sunrise, more people had begun to gather in the square. Housewives bartered quietly. Apprentices swept steps. A friar from the priory passed by with a prayer book wrapped in linen. and someone had not latched the pen properly. The pig wandered. It did not run nor root wildly. It simply walked, like any other soul unsure of where it was meant to be. Its steps were soft upon the stone. A goose honked and flapped its wings. The pig paused and sniffed, uninterested. Near the baker's wall, a spilled sack of oats lay scattered from a toppled cart. The pig found it without effort, and for several minutes the world shrank to nothing more than the crunch of grain beneath eager teeth. Madeline had returned, now holding a crust of bread. She approached the pig, curious but not afraid. It was a large pig, perhaps too large for its pen, with wiry hair the shade of dust and mud. Its ears flopped like tired leaves. She crouched and broke off a bit of her bread, holding it out with a flat hand, as she'd seen her mother do with the goat. The pig sniffed. It took the crust, then another, then a small sound. A surprised yelp. Her hand was nicked. Not badly. A scrape, perhaps a pinch. But there was blood, and in the quiet of the square it mattered. She pulled her hand back with a whimper and stared at the red dot growing on her palm. The pig stood there, chewing. News in Saint-Michel-sur-Orge did not travel quickly. It drifted like wood smoke from a damp fire. And so the story of the pig and the child arrived slowly at the ears of those who might do something about it. The town scribe, a man named Udo, sat beside the notary's door, sharpening a quill. When told of the bite, he raised an eyebrow and made a soft noise of contemplation, though he said little more. The bailiff, a tall man in a fur-trimmed coat, eventually made his way to the square. He examined the girl's hand without touching it. He bent over to look the pig in the eyes, though the pig was now asleep beneath a cart. "It will have to be considered," he said, to no one in particular. Madeline's mother arrived shortly after, wrapped in a dark shawl and flushed with the worry of late news. She scooped her daughter into her arms and gave the pig a look of stern disapproval. "Is she hurt?" the baker asked. "No worse than a thorn," the mother answered. "But it is the principle of it." They nodded. In Saint-Michel-sur-Orge, principle mattered. It was written into the grooves of the doors, the pace of the days, the manner of speaking. The pig snored quietly. The council of burgesses met beneath the low timbered roof of the town hall. The walls were uneven stone, their corners softened by centuries of pipe smoke and winter draft. Light came in from one high window, narrow and covered with oiled linen that made everything look like it was underwater. There were 5 men, a merchant, a priest, a carpenter, the bailiff, and the miller. All sat with hands clasped upon the table. A jug of cider passed quietly between them. Udo read from a slip of parchment. The child, Madeleine, daughter of Eloise the spinner, was nipped upon the hand by the pig belonging to Guillaume the butcher. The wound is shallow. The child is well. The pig is unmarked. There was a long silence. The priest cleared his throat. It is not fitting that animals roam freely. It unsettles the order. The miller scratched his beard. But it was only a bite. No bone, no fever. "Even so," said the bailiff, "the matter requires an end." They nodded. It was decided then. The pig would be put on trial, as the law, or at least its echoes, required. The scribe noted it down. Outside, a few pigeons fluttered past the bell tower. Somewhere, a dog barked once. And the pig, still unaware of its legal standing, slept on. Word of the upcoming trial stirred the town like a breeze through tall grass, subtle yet undeniable. There was no rush, only the slow pivot of attention, as people began to speak in lower tones near shop fronts and lean over fences with quiet speculation. A space was cleared beside the town hall. Not much was required. A plank bench, a few stools for onlookers, and a wooden platform used now and then for declarations or rare entertainments. There was no gallows, nor any courtroom robes. Just the usual cloth cloaks and the scratch of quills on parchment. The pig was brought to a small holding pen with a view of the square. Guillaume, the butcher, tied it with a length of rope he'd used once for firewood. The pig snorted, then lay down. It did not seem distressed. Madeleine remained home, her hand wrapped in clean linen. She sat on a stool by the hearth, watching her mother stir a pot of turnip and onion. Now and then, she looked down at her bandage, turning her hand to catch the light. There was pride in her eyes, though she said little. Outdoors, chickens scratched at the dry places between stones. Laundry hung limply in the still spring air. The cobbler walked slowly past the tavern and did not look up. All things moved gently, as they always had. By midday, the trial was ready to begin. A small crowd had gathered, no more than 24. They stood in a loose half-circle, wrapped in cloaks of wool and linen, with hoods drawn against the damp. The bailiff opened the proceedings with a voice neither loud nor commanding, but simply there, as a bell is there, to mark the hour. Udo stepped forward and unrolled his parchment. The pig is accused of causing harm to a child, by way of biting, on the morning of the 11th day of the month. Witnesses will speak. The baker, a broad man named Dennis, stepped forward first. He placed one hand upon the book of hours and muttered the familiar phrases, swearing to speak as he remembered. I saw the child offer bread to the pig. It took the bread. Then it took her hand. Not as a beast in rage, just took it, as though confused. He stepped back. Eloise, the child's mother, was next. Her words were simple. My daughter was kind. She has fed animals before. The pig was out of its place. That is all I say. Guillaume, the butcher, nodded when called. It is a good pig, he said. A quiet one. I did not see the moment. But I know it has never bitten before. The pig made no sound. It was noted that the pig did not speak in its own defense. This was not unusual. Nevertheless, the council sat with the matter for some time. The merchant, now sun-dappled beneath the oiled window, tapped his fingertips upon his knee. The carpenter frowned into the sky. The priest murmured a psalm beneath his breath. The bailiff leaned forward. There is no precedent for mercy, he said quietly, nor is there one for malice. The pig stood and shifted once, then lay down again. It blinked. A fly passed near its snout and was ignored. A boy behind the crowd sneezed. A rooster crowed, oddly late. The moment passed like any other. Udo finally looked up from his notes. It has been determined that the pig is to be held until further signs arise. If the child sickens, more shall be done. If not, the matter may rest. The people nodded. It was as fair a thing as one could hope for. The sun had moved just slightly. The day had turned a little older. The trial dispersed slowly. No one clapped nor shouted. They merely turned and walked away, the way one leaves a sermon or a drizzle, quietly and with no need to speak. Guillaume led the pig back to its pen. He offered it water and a turnip, which it accepted with the same patience as before. Madeleine napped on a woven mat. Her mother dozed beside her, the bandage still fresh but clean. There would be stew for supper, and perhaps a hymn before bed. The parchment of the day's events was folded and placed in a chest of older things. Accounts of grain owed, lists of winter repairs, a petition about a leaking roof. The sky darkened just slightly, as spring skies do. The bells rang again, softer now, echoing through the sleepy lanes. The town, never lively, returned to its usual stillness. And the pig, who had once taken a child's hand between its teeth and released it just as softly, curled up in straw and slept once more. As the sun lowered itself beyond the ridge of distant hills, the soft amber of evening spread slowly across Saint-Michel-sur-Orge. The church bell tolled once again, a muted reminder of time's gentle passage. In the square, the shadows deepened between cobblestones and beneath shuttered windows. A thin breeze whispered through the budding branches of an old elm tree, stirring loose leaves and the faint scent of wood smoke. The pig remained quiet in its pen, resting on a bed of straw that smelled faintly of hay and earth. Its breathing was slow and steady, as if it too had come to understand the stillness of the evening. Inside her humble home, Madeleine's mother prepared a simple meal by the hearth. The flickering flames cast a warm glow on the rough-hewn walls. Madeleine sat near the fire, her bandaged hand resting on her lap. The faintest trace of the day's red now nearly faded. Outside, a pair of owls began their soft call. The world was slipping quietly into night. The town was hushed. Lamps were lit in windows here and there, their flickering flames painting small golden pools against the gathering dark. The sounds of the day, horses' hooves, carts on stone, voices, had given way to the occasional chirp of crickets and the distant murmur of the river. In the town hall, the council's parchments were laid aside and the chairs left empty. The men had gone to their homes, the weight of the day settling gently upon their shoulders. Madeleine slept soundly, her small chest rising and falling with quiet breaths. Outside, the pig's silhouette was barely visible, a soft shadow against the straw. The night embraced the town as if it were a slow, steady breath, inhaled deeply and held. The slow turning of the earth brought dawn once more. A pale light filtered through mist and willow branches. Madeleine woke, her hand no longer aching, the skin smooth where the scrape had been. Outside, the pig stirred, rising slowly from its bed. The market square yawned awake again, the cobbles cool beneath early footsteps. Windows blinked open like tired eyes. No urgency came with the morning, only the gentle beginning of another day, unhurried and soft. The pig ambled toward the well, sniffing at fresh water, its breath mingling with the mist. The day unfolded with the usual calm rhythm. The baker's oven breathed warmth. The butcher sharpened his knives with familiar, steady strokes. Children's laughter echoed faintly from the alleyways, unburdened by the events of days past. Madeleine played near the fountain, her hand free and unmarked. She watched the pig, now contentedly rooting through scattered straw, its presence part of the quiet tapestry of the town. The council had made their decision. No further action was needed. Life would continue, slow and steady, as it always did. The pig, the child, and the town settled once more into their gentle harmony. A small story of an ordinary day in the quiet world of 1387.